Mark Scruton, production designer for Netflix's Wednesday. What is your history with the Addams Family? Were you a fan before this?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I loved the TV show when I was younger, growing up. Because when I think it was always on, and it sort of burrows into your head as part of your history. And I think the films as well were, they were definitely favorites when I was a kid growing up.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tim Burton directs the first four episodes. So, what were your conversations with him about the look of the show, and specifically like the Nevermore Academy set, which is where a lot of the action is?
Yeah, it was. I think starting out, the scripts that Miles Miller and Al Gough had written were really great in laying out the intentions. And when I started to talk to Tim about it, it became very clear that he had a lot of empathy with the whole world of Nevermore and the characters within it. So we really wanted to create a space that reflected that melting pot of sort of outcast cultures and people. And to create something that was visually interesting and had very lots of different levels to it. So there was sort of different styles of architecture, different elements of spaces, so very small closeted spaces, very big open expanses, but all the time wanting it to feel like a real school. So trying to bring it back to a more personal, relatable level that you remember elements of the school as a child, and you can still feel that without the grandeur sort of taking over and making it all seem unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the exterior, at least, it looks like this gigantic Gothic mansion. So, was that a real building? I know you guys shot in Romania. The
It
exterior.
was yeah. I mean, we looked at different countries. We started in Toronto and we sort of moved around a bit. We ended up in Romania, and we looked at a lot of different castles and palaces and environments to sort of base it on. We ended up with Cantacuzino, which was the one you see in the show. Now, actually, really, there not a lot of it left by the time we finished adding and enhancing and moving around with it. We used the location. We went there for about 3 or 4 days. We shot a lot of the exterior stuff around the front of the building. But it was really just a spring point. We then took it, and there was a sort of a central column that Tim really hooked in on, which had that sort of Addams Family quality to it without it being a direct reference to it. And I think that was the linchpin for everything else. And it grew beyond that. And we took lots of different elements of architecture, sort of Moorish architecture and Ottoman and brutalist. And a lot of that was led actually from my time working in Romania when I first got there. We hadn't really planned to go down that route, but actually when I got there, the mix of architecture in Romania is so varied, and it's all sort of crammed together in this glorious collage of styles. And it really sort of created something very interesting, which I thought worked really well for the story we were trying to tell. So we explored that a lot more in the interiors, actually, when you get into the separate spaces. But that was our idea to make it a sort of an eclectic pile of a mansion rather than one specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of eclectic, Wednesday and Enid's dorm room is complete opposites attract. It's like Wednesday's side is just dark and grays, blacks, and then Enid's is completely colorful. It's like Easter like threw up on it. So what was it like designing that room?
It was great. I mean, and the whole show was a lot of fun to design. And there was the first set I designed, and it was always going to be the hub for everything else. And and nothing in Tim's sort of world is there's never too much information. It's also always very concise. Everything's got this sort of proscenium quality to it, and we wanted it to tell the story immediately, then in a sort of believable way. So we took the shell of the idea that they're up in the loft, and that Enid's been up there on her own, and she's created this sort of glorious riot of color, and everything about her is just, her whole character is color. And she's done the stained glass window, and that's her world. And then the invasion of Wednesday into it sort of drains down one side to the point at which she then scrapes the color back on the windows, and you get this sort of perfect symmetry of the opposites, which we then sort of spread out through the show. So everything is about opposites and how they work together, and the conflict and everything that goes with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jericho, the town, is the opposite too, because it looks like this like storybook idyllic town. So what was it like designing that?
Well, that was the ultimate extension. So we took
Yeah.
the idea of the room and then just blew it up to the whole storyline. And Jericho was interesting because when we first started, we were looking at locations and we were in scouting Toronto and trying to find towns that would let us sort of move in and take over, and we were finding places that sort of worked, and a little bit this worked, but then that didn't work. And Tim's so specific about how things work, and the script was very specific about all the different plot points and the devices. And the minute you started trying to unpick that and hang it on a real place, it all kind of didn't quite work. So when we pivoted and we moved to Romania, a lot to do with space as much as anything else, but suddenly it doesn't have any New England towns kicking around in Romania that we could jump into. So very quickly we realized we had to build it, and we had to build quite a lot of it because we've got eight episodes. A lot happens in the town. There's a lot of plot points, a lot of places that needed to coexist. So we took over a lot of farmland next to the studio, leveled it, turned it into Jericho, which meant we could plot everything very precisely. So all the plot points, all the little bits.
Yeah, because you have like a weather vane, and then
the weather vane on the corner, which is sort of everything happens around that. That was very important to be a composite set because it would never have worked trying to do it in the studio and jump backwards and forwards. So that was built as a stage environment. So we had the ceilings all popped out and it had studio lighting inside and everything else as well. But it was all composite. And we built, even the psychiatrist's office was up. We had parts of it up on the third floor where Wednesday could jump out, run across the rooftops, goes down the drain pipe. All that was built into the set. So there was very little CG elements on that. Even the church, we built everything composite because we were there so much. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to limit what they could shoot by saying, oh no, it's green screen over there or everything else. There was only really one aspect that wasn't complete, and that was looking back up the main street where you actually see Nevermore Academy off in the distance, sort of on the hillside.
Yeah.
But everything else was built for real. So
that's awesome. Well, I think Thing is the low-key star of the show. But and I understand like you guys actually had a hand actor play Thing.
Yes, it's rather fabulous.
But yeah, I think Victor Dorobantu is his name. But I guess how do you build elements of a set while keeping in mind that you're going to have a walking hand on set, and there's going to be close-ups of the hand and like the
it was interesting. I mean, we didn't quite know. We were designing everything and working towards the shoot date and everything else, and they were still developing how they were going to do Thing. And Tim is very keen to do as much practically as we can, and we could see it coming. And how is it going to be CG? Is it going to be this? Are we going to reference the hand actor and Victor? But then Victor was so great that Tim wanted him on set doing it for real. So suddenly we're into this world very similar to designing like the sets for the Muppets, where things have to be elevated. You have to have trapdoors. You have to have secret ways of getting the actor in. You have bits of the set have to fly, or you have to have half a desk, or there's endless different permutations of bits we had to come up with. And of course, a lot of that was slightly happening on the fly because we didn't quite know where he was going to go. So we had to have endless options to give him that.
I know, because I was like, is he just like under a table right now? Like he's probably like contorting himself just to get like the movements.
Well, no, exactly. And we didn't, because he was obviously a character in his own right. So when he came onto the set, he would show Tim what he had in mind, maybe what we had in mind. So suddenly we were, sawing holes in the walls or bringing out the half desk we, had up our sleeve because we had a feeling this might happen. So it was, there was so many scenes with him and it was such a great performance. It became very much our job to keep up with it and give him the options to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, the season finale kind of tees up a second season. So what do you hope to see in a potential season 2?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, I think I'll be the last person to know about it when if that happens. But obviously what Alan Miles, the showrunners, have got in mind is a world where you could pick up any one of the characters within the show and exploit that. Everyone, it's such a rich world that they've created. It's very hard to say, but I think the options are there for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of avenues you can take, and not even just at Nevermore. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but
No,
sure.
I think there's a lot of different storylines you could pick up on there, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Mark, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Okay, lovely to
Thank
talk to
you.
you.